All right, guys. You may remember some of this from last year, but I'm going to go over it with you anyway. This topic, subjunctives, tends to be one of the dreaded topics in Latin grammar, but it's actually rather simple. I think that sometimes people get themselves a little bit worked up if they look through a grammar and see how many things the subjunctive can be used for, but in practice, they're actually very easy to identify, and you get used to them after a while. It's really no big deal. Uh, but apparently someone, as people do, have a lot of time on the internet to play around with this. Anyway, so key things you need to know about subjunctives are that they express generally various states of unreality, or alternatively, they'll be used to develop some sort of subordinate or dependent clause. So for the various states of unreality, I realize that's very vague. You can consider cases like this. Si rex esem, not si rex sum, right? Si rex esem, if I were king, omnes miseri essent. Everyone would be wretched. Right here, esem and essent are in the subjunctive, and what you should note here is that it expresses a certain state of unreality, right? Si rex esem, if I were king, and then parentheses, but I'm not, all would be miserable or all would be wretched, but they're not, or perhaps they are, but that's really irrelevant to the example. Consider the next one. Haik dixisem, I would have said these things, si te amavisem, if I had loved you. Notice I would have said these things, but I didn't, if I had loved you, but I didn't. All right, notice here in the next one, et Deus dixit fiat lux, et lux fit. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Here with fiat lux, notice light does not yet exist. He's willing it into existence with the subjunctive, let there be light, right? And then notice it can also be used to express purpose and other sorts of things like that. So Quintus rosas puellae dated, Quintus gave roses to the girl. Ut, this is one of the ways you'll really identify these subjunctive clauses is with ut, with the subjunctive. Ut eum amaret, so that she would or so that she might love him. All right? So there's actually a comic dealing with this. I don't know why that included this. Anyway, notice right here the response, no, but I sure wish I had, again, applies a state of unreality in the subjunctive mood. Okay, so basic verb review, you might remember that you have 4 conjugations, and remember that the way you determine what conjugation something, I can't get that to highlight just the 3, whatever, forget about it. So remember, the last 3 letters here of your present active infinitive, that is your second principal part, will determine what conjugation a verb belongs to. So verbs ending in are are first conjugation, verbs ending in ere with a long e, those are second conjugation, ere with a short e, third conjugation, ere are fourth conjugation. All right. You might also remember that all those conjugations for most regular verbs, they'll have 4 principal parts, a full system, right? The first principal part is your first person singular, present active indicative, so amo, I love. Your second principal part is your present active infinitive, amare, to love. Your third principal part is your first person singular perfect active indicative. That's the perfect thing that corresponds to this. Amawi, I have loved, and then amatum, your fourth principal part is the perfect passive participle, having been loved. All right, and that's the same for all of these verbs, all these conjugations with the various principal parts. Remember, the idea behind remembering the principal parts is that these are different forms of the verb that allow you to build all of the other forms of the verb. If you know these forms, you can build any of the tenses, any of the moods, okay? And that's why they're listed in the dictionary. So the good news is, you may remember this from last year, there are only 4 tenses in the subjunctive. Those are the present, the imperfect, the perfect, and the pluperfect. Okay. In effect, that means that there's no future and there's no future perfect. All right. So let's take a little bit, let's take a look for a minute at the morphology. The present active subjunctive is formed using a vowel change, and the vowel that's changed is the vowel which is characteristic in the second principal part, in the infinitive. So you'll notice by that I mean that the characteristic vowel, for example, of first conjugation verbs in are is going to be that A right there, okay? So you might remember in the indicative, you would conjugate this amo, amas, amat, amamos, amatis, amant, right? Videre would be video, vides, videt, videmus, videtis, vident. Dicere would be dico, dicis, dicit, dicimus, dicitis, dicunt, and then audire would be audio, audis, audit, audimus, auditis, audiunt. Okay. So what happens is you change the vowel in the conjugation. So amo becomes amem, mas becomes ames. Only the first person singular is a little bit odd. All the others, you'll just change the vowel and keep the exact same ending. All right. Notice with the second conjugation, the E will, because the E is long, the E will stay in there. So you'll, instead of video, you'll have videam. Instead of vides, you'll just add this A. And you have videat, videamus, videatis, videant. Right. With third conjugation, remember the E is short there, and so usually you have dico, dicis with an I instead of an E, but notice that that changes to an A. And then for fourth conjugation verbs, the I will stay in there, but otherwise you'll have an AM, AS. In practice, if you want to remember this the really easy way, first conjugation verbs will end in ms, et, amos, etis, ent in the present subjunctive, and then all of the others you'll notice you will have as, at, amos, atis, ant. The only difference is that these keep the E, these don't have an E, and then these have an I. The way to remember this is with we fear a liar, to remember those vowel changes. Alternatively, you can remember the more violent example of we beat a friar. So that's the present active subjunctive, all right? But note here that you need to know what conjugation a verb belongs to. Otherwise, you might see something like dicas and think that it is from a first conjugation verb, dicare, and then you'll not catch that it's subjunctive. Okay, moving on to the imperfect subjunctive. This is super easy to do. Just take your second principal part, your infinitive, and then add these endings m, s, t, mus, tis, and nt. All right, that'll apply for all these. So amarem, amares, amaret, amaremus, amaretis, amarent. Okay, viderem, videres, videre, etc., etc. These are easy to form, easy to recognize. Just keep in mind, if you see an infinitive that has an ending appended to it, then it's probably an imperfect active subjunctive that you're looking at. Okay. Next one, your perfect active subjunctive. Note that the present active subjunctive and the imperfect active subjunctive are formed as a part of the present system, which they are, with that using the second principal part, the infinitive. But then the perfect and the pluperfect will use the perfect stem, which you might remember you find by taking your third principal part and chopping off that I. So the third principal part, amawi, of a first conjugation verb would then become amav as your perfect stem. And then all you'll do is add endings which are almost identical to the future perfect endings. So the only thing that's different is, whereas in the future perfect you would have amawero, amaweres, amaweret, here you have amawerim, amaweres, amaweret, viderim, videres, videret, dixerim, dixeres, dixeret, audiverem, audiveres, etc., etc. All right. So these ones are fairly simple as well. Just take your third principal part, take off the I, and then add erim, eris, erit, erimus, eritis, erent. All right? Fairly straightforward. And then your pluperfect active subjunctive, this is the last one of the actives, that is. Get ready for the passive video to come. All you need to do is take that same third principal part, remember, because this is pluperfect, it's a part of the perfect system. Take your third principal part, and then you're going to add SSE to form your perfect active infinitive. So you might remember that amare means to love, but amawise here, your perfect active infinitive, means to have loved, okay? Notice we use both of these infinitives in English as well. So ama we say to have loved, we di say to have seen, dixi say to have said, audi we say to have heard. All right. So once you have that perfect active infinitive, all you have to do is add the endings m, s, t, mustisnt, mst, mustisnt, mst, etc., right? So amawisem, amawises, amawiset. These ones jump out at you because you'll see this isem, ises, iset. When you see a verb in isem, ises, iset, and all of that, you'll know that it's a pluperfect active subjunctive. There's no other formation that's quite like that. All right. So as I said, all of these are fairly unique and easy to identify. I think the only ones that might give you trouble are the present active subjunctives because they involve this vowel change, which requires that you know the conjugation, and then possibly the perfect active subjunctives you may confuse with future perfects, but I will tell you that in general, the perfect active subjunctive is more common than the future perfect active, but in practice, they get translated almost the same way. All right, so let me show you a couple examples of how this works. These are just a few of the uses of the subjunctive that you might see, especially in the readings that we have going on right now. So there's a hortatory subjunctive. You might remember the verb hortor, hortare, which means to encourage someone to do something or to exhort them. Here, the hortatory subjunctive is just indicating that you want someone to do something. Usually this is used in the first person singular or the first person plural. And you'll usually translate this with something like let us or let me. All right, so we vamos. Notice not we vimos, but we vamos, third conjugation present active subjunctive. So we vamos me a lesbiat qua amemos, not amamos, but amemos. Let us live and let us love. Here, discamos instead of discimos, discamos. Let us learn, and then videamos rather than videmos, let us see. So videmos would be we see, videamos, let us see. All right, so that's the hortatory subjunctive. You might also have purpose clauses. So when he comes, ut eam videat, so that he may see her. Your purpose clauses will be introduced by ut if it's a positive purpose, right? So when he comes, so that he might see her. You could have something similar like discedit, he leaves, and then ut would change to ne. He leaves, ne eam videat, so that he might not see her. All right. Take a look at this one. Ab aratro abduxerunt cincinatum ut dictator esset. They took Cincinnatus away from the plow so that, notice ut, so that he could be dictator. All right. If they adduxerunt ad aratrum, if they brought him back to the plow so that he might not be dictator, that would be different, and that would be expressed with ne. Legum id circo servisumus, we are slaves of the law on that account. Ut, so that liberesimus, we may be free. All right, and then here's an example with a negative purpose. Cicero orationem habuit, Cicero had an oration or gave a speech. Ne, so that Catiline would not, right? So that he would not express negative purpose with ne instead of ut, so that he would not destroy the republicum, destroy the republic. All right, so those are purpose clauses. These are pretty straightforward. You'll always see them with ut or ne, and they're hard to miss. You'll probably get those in context. And then result clauses. These are often introduced with a set of words, which I probably should have put up here, like tam, tot, tanta, adeo, and things like that. I'll maybe give you guys a list. You'll see more in these in examples as we read along. These just express the natural result of an action or a state of affairs, but they use subjunctive. So there erant, there were, tot edificia, so many buildings that ut omnia videre non possem, so that I could not see them all. Here, notice this doesn't express a purpose, but rather a result of the state of affairs indicated in the main sentence. Same thing right here. Saturnus tanta justitia fuisse dicitur. Saturn is said to have been with such justice, or like a guy of such justice. Ut that nec serviret quisquam sub illo. No one was a slave or served under him. Nec quidquam suum proprium haberet. Nor did anyone have anything of his own property. Right? Notice again, both subjunctives. Here's an imperfect. Here's another imperfect. You can identify the infinitive with an ending appended to it, both there and here servire and habere with T. And I will call attention to the fact that in result clauses like this, your negative will be expressed by ut ne or ut nemo or something like this, ut nec, rather than with ne. All right, so hopefully that was straightforward. I realize this is a little bit of a longer video. Sorry about that. Some of this is review, but hopefully most of it was straightforward. If none of it made sense, talk to me about it in class. All right, valete omnes.